because he was such a oivet, and they used to try to be maval with him in his time.
Confusing.
Yeah. Even in Tochi too.
Shatchanim.
Yeah.
Shatchanim.
Yeah. So what did they used to do? He would be in the middle of his diamond, and they would sort of, dance and do all sorts of things, make all sorts of funny movements. He wouldn't see them. He just didn't know what was going on. And once they really meant good because they wanted to invite him to come to a Farbrengen that was going on. Because they knew that if he Farbrengen, all the city would listen. So they made all sorts of dances and everything in front of him. He didn't understand. He didn't clap. He didn't know what was happening. And in the end, they did something. Somebody got up on the ceiling and jumped down and made a tremendous noise. And so he sort of opened one of his eyes, Says, yeah, what's going on around here? So all of a sudden they saw him open one of his eyes. They said, Reb David said, by Ploini Farbrengen. So they say that in a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, he finished the whole thing. You heard there was a Farbrengen? These guys were really into things. But until that, they couldn't get him to pay any attention. So the whole thing comes to how do you call it, a climax, that once he was davening in a small shtibel, not in, he found himself a little place where he could go and hide away, it was quiet. So one day there was a levaya, they called a funeral. So the Rebbe Rashav went to the funeral. And when the funeral completed, the Rebbe went into that shtibel to say, there's a custom, you probably heard about it. I heard it from Rav Landa. He taught me the whole thing, that if you come back from a funeral, you should go into a shul, and you should sit in 7 places, and you should say Yoshev B'Seisa Elyon, and each time you add a new posik. You start with the first posik, then you get down to, I think, the 7th posik.
New word, no?
Some to Me'oinecha is the 7th posik. Anyway, and then you add all the other psukim at the end of the Yoshev B'Seisa Elyon. And you move in 7 places. You have to sit in 7 different places. So the Rebbe Rashav came into this shtibel, and Shalom Aleichem, the Rebbe Rashav came into this shtibel, and he moved, the Rebbe moved around in 7 different places. And in the meantime, there was a big noise, because the Rebbe came in, all the Siddim came along, and there was a lot of noise, and this Reb David Aradoka, he was sitting in a corner, and he didn't know what was going on. He was completely not in the whole thing. So, everybody was amazed. The Rebbe came in, I thought he would wake up. So when the Rebbe finished saying the 7 times the Pesukim, he walked over, the Rebbe walked over to where he was and looked at him. And he didn't wake up either. So the Rebbe said, he said, das is was ich mein. He said, that's what I'm after, that's what I'm aiming for. And he said, Yidden, he said, take a look, because that's how you should do it. That's what he said to all the people. He said, take a look, because that's how you should do it. So he didn't wake up even then. Nicht ungeweckt. And the Rebbe went very quietly not to disturb his, that was Reb David. So we just see, this is real business, These guys were really into it. And Reb Chonia Morozov, he was just, Elikus on 2 feet. That's what I heard from one of the chiddushim. But he mamish was amazing. And once he used to learn Chavruza with the Rebbe Rayat. They used to learn together, but before the Rebbe Rayat became Rebbe. And the trouble is, I started one mitzvah and I moved to another one. But I'll tell you a mitzvah that I heard when Reb Chonia Morozov was learning once with the Rebbe Rayat. So Reb Chonia said to the Rebbe, he said that this Inyan that we're learning now is Mavua very much in a Maimon from Reb Hillel Paricha. A Maimon says from Reb Hillel Paricha. So the Rebbe Rayat said, that's good. That's good. So he thought the Rebbe Rayat would want to look and see what's there. But he didn't say anything. So, Konya Morozo made like that with his hand, What's wrong with Rabbi Parton? So the Rebbe said, he said, if you want to go and bring the Sefer, you can go. He said, about uns, meaning the Rabbeim, he said, uns lernen wir nur Rebbetzke. He said, we learn only Rebbe. We don't look at anything else. The Rebbe was very liberal. The Rebbe said to print up the story of Rabbi Parton. People learn them now. But that's what I heard. That Reb Chania Morozo told the story later. And so once he and the Rebbe were learning, and the Rebbe Rashab came in and walked past, and they were sitting and learning. So the Rebbe Rashab looked at what they were learning, and they looked at Chania Morozo, and he said, Chania, he said, not the Arva, and not the Yira. He said, I'm giving you Arva, and I'm giving you Yira. That's what he said to him. So you can imagine who this guy must have been, This is mind-boggling. So you know what he answered? He said, Rabbi, he said, I want my own. He said in Yiddish, Rabbi, ich will eigene. So the Rebbe Rashab saw it. Like that. The Rebbe said, wir kein Geschäft nicht getan. So he said, if so, we didn't do any business. So later, he was very mischaret. He had
regret.
Big
Regret.
Huh?
He was sorry. He regretted.
Yeah, big regret. And he said that had he taken what the Rebbe wanted to give him and then worked, he could have had who knows what. Who knows where he could have gone. And the Rebbe Rayat said to him, I'm sorry, there's certain moments, and that's it. So, you don't get the chance back again. But the very fact that the Rebbe said that to him, that's just mind-boggling. So we see that these people were really big-timers, these guys really meant business, they were really into it. It's very hard to describe. And so we see that this unbelievable connection between Mesiras Nefesh and knowing everything very carefully. You've got to know everything, and you have to be Masik, Asoga Gemura Ubrura, and then you've got to move up into Mesiras Nefesh. And Ulai, Domani, that it's written, the Pshat, that through your knowing everything, then it can be that your Mesiras Nefesh will be greater. But only if you want to have the Mesiras Nefesh. Or if you want to stay with the Asoga, then the Mesiras Nefesh could be one piece of good. It could be that the Asoga will be Ma'alim, that it could hide the Mesiras Nefesh. But if you decide that you want to have a Mesiras Nefesh, then the Mesiras Nefesh helps. Then the Hasoga helps the Mesiras Nefesh. All the profundity of knowledge, that helps the self-sacrifice, it helps the Mesiras Nefesh. Anyway, I'm carrying on a bit too long around here. But that's the Nakuda of Tonhei Tmim. And if I'm going to finish this passage, I'm going to say L'chaim, we'll have a break. I once heard the story from Siddim in Kwachabad, that I heard the story this way. I'm telling you the way I heard it, because there's another girsa that's a little bit different, but it's basically the same nakuda. That there once came a bocher into Tonhei Tmim, and he wasn't necessarily from the big mishpachas of Chabad. He was a bocher from, what you might call other background. And he came in, and he was only in the yeshiva. This is in the lifetime of the Rebbe Rashab, and he was only in the yeshiva for a short while. And then all of a sudden he starts davening very long. He starts davening Barichas, Gedela. So the Mashgiach on the Chassidas Yeah, I thought that's a little bit funny, you know. He's just new, you know, he doesn't, he can't really know very much. So what is he telling about all the time? Now, what's he doing all the time? So anyway, it got longer and it got longer. And the Mashgiach on the Nigla, he was really furious, you know, because he had to see that everybody was in the Seder. You know. And there's this Pochim. He's one of the Oivdim, and he's a real Oivd. Because there were some of the big Oivdim, like Kiyevman, they had like Rishus. You know, so. And he didn't come, so the Mashgiach called him over, and he said, listen, the Seder is part of Tomchei Tmim, and the Rebbe wants Seder, just like he wants that you should learn and daven. The Rebbe wants you should be in the Seder, and he gave him a whole beautiful beer, but they're a kiro. You know? And he didn't have a thing. The next day, the book was even later. You know? So it got to the point, in Lubavitch, the Seder Nigla was very long. It was 8 hours straight, from 12 o'clock by day to 8 o'clock at night. One straight learning Nigla. That was the Seder. So he never used to see him. You know, even up to 8 o'clock at night, he didn't see this book. So in the end, he met him one day when he was going down the stairs, and the book was coming into the building, and he said, I don't see you anymore. What's going on? You know, what's happening around here? What's going on? So the book said, listen. He said, until I manage to daven, until I finish, and I'm only human, I need to have a little bit of something. And by then, the whole breakfast is finished. They're already presenting the evening meal. So I could eat a little something. So I chop a bit here and I chop a bit there. He said, till I finish it all, it's late, you know, I got to daven mincha. He said, I don't make it to the Seder Nigla. So the Mashgiach in the Nigla, he went to the Rebbe Rayatz, who was the Menahel, it is well known. He was the Menahel at Yeshiva, and he pimped on the bocher. He told him to the Rebbe Rayatz. So the Rebbe Rayatz says, oh yes, we have to call the bocher. You have to, what's this? He's missed out on the whole Seder Nigla. So they bring in the bocher, and the Rebbe Rayatz is sitting there. And because the Rebbe Rayatz's face was very, you know, at the best of time was very, you know, that he could, it was sort of mashra, sort of a feeling, you know.
Stern.
Yeah. Oh,
Stern.
Yes, stern. So the bocher comes in here and he sees the Mashgiach, and the sitters are sitting here, the Mashgiach, and the Nigla is sitting here, and the Rebbe Rayatz, he went white, or he didn't know what he going to do. So the Mashgiach and the Nigla begins, and he says, you know, he's only a short time in Tomchei Tmim, and he said he davened so long, and what does he daven with already? You know, he said we don't see him in the whole Seder Nigla until he finishes, until he gets something to eat, and he davens mincha, and he doesn't bother coming anymore to them. He said, so the Friedrich Rebbe, you know, hears all this, and all of a sudden the Friedrich Rebbe turns to the bocher, and he says to him, no, what do you have to say? I heard what they say, what do you say? So he said to the Friedrich Rebbe, he said, listen, he said, I came to the yeshiva here, he said, it's true, I'm new, but he said, when I came here, they told me that there's a Rebbe here. And he said, the Rebbe, he's the leader, he's the one. And he said, every Shabbos, he says a big long thing, a maimah. So he said, if he's the one, then I got to know what he's saying. Yeah. He said, and I got to translate that into my life. He's not just saying all this for no point, you know. He's not just saying this for any old reason. He's saying this because, you know, he wants people to live this way. Wouldn't you say that? So the Rebbe Rayatz didn't answer him. The Rebbe Rayatz just sort of, but they saw the eyes of the Rebbe Rayatz sort of, he absorbed it very well. So then he said, tell me, the second half of last Shabbos' mine with the Rabbi said to him, tell me what was there, what do you see to be, practical, or what do you get out of it? So this Bocher all of a sudden started off with an amazing explanation at the second part of the mine. The second part, not the first part. So the Rabbi is sitting there, and gradually they saw a look of sort of, the sternness, passed away from the Rabbi's eyes, and he didn't comment. He heard sort of Bocher explain to him, and he said, I got to think all this over. He said, he meant me. I said, what's he doing there? He meant me, so I got to think that over, and that's pretty high stuff. I got to work out, how does that affect me? What's that got to say to me? So he said, it takes a bit of time. He said, by the time I'm finished, I got no time left. So the Rabbi sort of heard him, didn't say a word, and he said, "Konscan." He said, you can go. So later the Rabbi calls over the Mashgiach in the Nigla, and he said, listen, he said, leave him alone. I'm sorry, leave him alone. And Miaz, nobody ever said anything. And he just continued. In other words, he only learned Chassidus in the morning, and he learned Chassidus in the evening. What was with these nigla, me or there? But the Rabbi didn't see right to interfere with him. And on the contrary, having heard what he said, the whole look on the Rabbi's face altered, and he just said to him, Konscan, you can go. So from that we see that these guys, they really meant business, It's another type of approach, They really meant Vayer Olov Hashem. Amen. That Hashem should appear in their life. That's what they meant, And they were prepared to put effort into it. And that's what the Rebbe Rashab saw this Torah Harodoka. They said, and that's why he said that the whole Tomchei Tmim was worth him and 2 others. And he said the rest of it was all, had occurred a lot of profit. So guys, listen, I'm talking too much and it's getting a bit complicated here, the whole thing. And it should be in a good show, and we should realize that we have to do it. It's not a simple business. And what I want to try to get the message over to you guys, that this is the shortage of the Torah of Mashiach, and this is the shortage of the message of Mashiach. And the Rebbe has taken that and he's made it into reality. And the Rebbe took on himself a task that no other role or Rebbe has ever taken on himself in all the generations. To take all the Musogim which lead to Mashiach, but make Mashiach a reality. And make that it should actually happen, that nobody's done so far. So the next step was from that unbelievable kesher and dweika in Elikuz that these guys had. The next step was into the practical world. They became the Chayalei Beis Dovid. And that's the famous sikha that the Rabbi made in Torah Samuel Bay. And that's after 3 years, after he already called the yeshiva name Tomchei Tmimim, because he gave the name of Tomchei Tmimim in Torah Nun Tes. And for 2 years, the yeshiva was founded in Torah Nun Zayin. And for 2 years there was no name this year. And by the Hakofas, in Torah Nun Tes, the Rebbe Rashab used to get the last Hakofa. So when you're holding the Sefer Torah, you say the Nagina, you say the Charuz. So the final Charuz is Toimach Tamimim Hoishiono. So when the Rebbe said those words, and he said Toimach Tamimim Hoishiono, then he said, what's for a Shaila? He said, what is the question, Michal? What is to call a yeshiva? He said, the yeshiva's name is Tomchei Tmimim, Rosh Rabbi. So what's the Rosh Rabbi? So they say that with that, the Rebbe Rashab was koilel all the Anshe Shlomeinu, all the Anash. And he made them the Tomchei Tmimim, which means that everything that was learned in the yeshiva was also their learning. They were the supporter of it. And so many of the Chassidim who were always in Maso Matan, they were in business or other inyanim, they all gave away a lot of their money to Tomchei Tmimim. That's how it managed to hold out. Otherwise, in Russia in those days, to hold out to pay all the malamdim, had to feed all the bochim, had to keep all the upkeep. They wouldn't have been so. And I know people that they mamish gave much more than Choimik. They gave almost their whole money to Tomchei Tmimim. I know such a person. And then there was a big Gvir, and he was called Rabbi Guaria. He was a big Gvir, and he was later also a very devoted chassid to the Rebbe Rayatz. And he passed away in the Shoya, and all his wife and his children. They were, because they were in Poland with the Friedrich Rebbe. And they got caught by the Nazis, terrible. But this Rebbe Guaria, he was a big Gvir. And he used to give big sums of money to Tomchei Tmimim. And the buildings where after they left Lubavitch, almost all the buildings where they were in that period, he bought the buildings. He actually purchased them and gave them to the yeshiva. He was an amazing guy. Anyway, so we see that there was this amazing passage from all the learning and all the unbelievable dveikas, but Philip, by the big Chassidish Bochrim, it later translated itself into Mesiras Nefesh B'Puyel in Olam Haseh HaGashmi V'Chumri B'Yozer, until these people became what the Rebbe called the Chayalei Beis Dovid. And the Rebbe said that that's a new Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe, the Rebbe, the Rebbe said that that's a new Rosh Hashanah Chabad. The Rebbe Rashab didn't say that much. But the Rebbe said that's a new Rosh Hashanah of Chabad, Chayalei Beis Dovid. And so Chayalei Beis Dovid, the people they're fighting a war, And so there's no holds barred. It's a war. So I want to tell you a little story that I personally heard, and this puts the whole thing in an amazing light and shows amazing killer of what we're trying to get across. When I first came to Eretz Yisrael, I went to Kfar Chabad. Before I went to the yeshiva in Lud, I was about a week or so in Kfar Chabad. And my mashpia in Australia, Zalman Serebransky, he had certain relatives in Kfar Chabad, and he wanted me to visit them and give a greeting in his name. So I saw this being in Kfar Chabad as an opportunity to do that. So as a matter of fact, there was another great chassid from Tomchei Tmimim. and he was called Pinchas Schreiber, is his name. He was also a big chassid. And he had a son in Krakow, Chaim Schreiber, all of a sudden, that he was some sort of a relative by marriage with my mashpia. And my mashpia told him I must go in and meet him and give him a greeting. He was a very amazing person. He was a Balchua. He dropped off one stage, and he came back. It's a whole amazing story. He was a very amazing, pneumatic, quiet person. Very still, very pneumatic. I met up with him. And then, in those days, there were two Rabbonim in Kwachabad. There was the main Rav, Reb Shneur Goralik. He was like the main Rav in charge of Kwachabad. And then there was a deputy Rav, and he, like, if the Rav wasn't able, or he'd gone to a chasna, or he wasn't there for a few days or something, he used to pass him all the shilas. And his name was Rav Glasman. He was, I've forgotten his first name, but anyway, Glasman. And he was the father of two people that they lived in Eretz Yisrael, and they were called Shalom Bear and I've forgotten the name of the other one, Glasman. But this person, he was a very big Talmud Chacham. He was, and he was a Rav. He passed in Shiloh. But he also had big ideas in Ebenezer, in Gittin and Kedushin and all these. He was very tremendously learned. So I went in to see him and to give him over a greeting from my mashpia. But when I came in, he was there, and he told me to sit down. And then his wife, she put in some kibbutz, some mazenas, and some tea and everything. So I just happened to notice that he had a sort of a malformed hand. He had like two fingers were stuck together, one finger was like crooked, It was a little bit unusual. I just happened to notice it. Because so he was very sharp. He noticed that my eye went towards his hand. So he said, you've noticed my hand. I said, so he said that